Hey guys, it's Alex. Now, it might not seem like a big deal to you guys, but I was able to go live on Instagram with Jon Lund Jr., the lead calibrator at Lund Racing, and I was able to download it somehow. I had to look up a whole bunch of different apps, and I found an app that lets me download a live feed. Now, the quality isn't great, but the substance is there. So this is a long video. It is 1 hour, but if you're into 2018 Mustang calibration and how Lund Racing got to where they are with their Whipple supercharged 2018 Mustang, this is a great video to watch and to get you up to speed on how everything went down at Lund Racing. How do I add people? Damn, that's the thing I didn't look up. Hey guys, this is Alex, and I told you I was going to go live with Jon Lund. I just have to find Jon Lund now, so I got to see how this whole thing works. Go live with, let me see, Jon Lund. I think he has to watch me. There he is. And we can go live together in tandem, and we'll talk about 2018 Mustang tuning together. Wow, look.
Hey.
That's great. Excellent. Hey, Jon, just introduce yourself to the 30 people that are watching real quick. Let them know who you are and what you do at Lund Racing.
I'm Jon Lund Jr. Senior is my dad. I'm I guess, lead calibrator for Lund Racing. So I basically head up all the R&D, so to speak. Jack of all trades, try to master many. It's always a process. So
when you say you do the base files and you do the R&D, what does exactly that entail? Like let's say on 2018 Mustang, like we're going to talk about today, basically what is your job at Lund Racing with that car once you guys get your hands on it?
So basically the process is, and I'll use the 18 as the example, back when we got it in November, December, the initial plan was not to, go straight to the track, try to run numbers. I wanted to figure everything out first on how to make it shift the way I wanted it to shift. I wanted to have my head wrapped around everything before we took it to the track. That way we could then return it back to stock, even down to the tires, run it all in the same day. So that was all laid out in that video that I put out on YouTube back in, I think, end of December. So basically the process was get the car, log it stock, figure everything out, see what's going on, see what's new, see what's the same, and then basically just start diving into the calibration. Not so much making changes to see what they do. A lot of it was to see what was different, and due to the access that we have and the capabilities we have, I was able to go in and figure things out before having to do a lot of guesswork. So the approach that we try to take is no guesswork. Try to understand what we're changing before we change it, because I think a lot of calibrators get into the habit where, due to access, I think mostly,
You just try shit, right?
You just try stuff and you don't know what it does. Really, you have an understanding. It's like 50-50. You're tossing a coin. And in some cases, that can be kind of dangerous, especially when you're dealing with drive-by-wire stuff. And, you don't want to have a case where you have runaway throttle. So I've not had that personally happen. I've heard horror stories. One of the main ones.
Early on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Three valve stuff, basically. Back when drive-by-wire first came out. So, guys were jacking torque wheeler up real high and changing, driver demand. And, they didn't know what it did. And you'd go half throttle and it'd go wide open. Yeah. Or they'd change something with the throttle calibration, and, it's not, the throttle opens definitely when you don't want it to. So I do have one case where it happened to me. It was at our old shop on the Silver Shelby. I was messing with cold start, something simple. And that car, stock engine with L&M cams in it. So it's a little can tanker. It's on cold start. And it had the E85. I cold started it. I think the family was at the shop. So my wife and 2 boys at the time, they had just gone in. A former employee, Greg, was sitting in the office. I'm out in the shop. I fire it up, and they had just opened the door to the shop, and it flared, but it didn't just flare. It went to 2,500, and then the torque wheel air went through the roof. The throttle just climbed really high, went to $5,000 dead cold, and it's super loud. Yeah. It made one of the boys cry. So,
so in 2018 Mustang, what did the car run stock? If you're having a little grainy, if it looks a little grainy on your end, don't worry, it'll come back. But I'm telling the people, if they lose, if I look a little grainy, just relax, it'll all come back.
You look fine.
So what was the quickest the car ran bone stock? Because I know you guys, I'm saying bone stock down to the cold air. What was the quickest it ever ran? On pump gas.
On the Pirellis?
Yes.
I believe Desan was driving it at the time. It was a 12.0, I think, at 118. But the air was really good. I'm not going to lie. It was minus 500 DA all day.
You never get that. Oh,
yeah. Yeah. It was, I mean, it wasn't cold. It was just really dense air. So, and that was at MIR, which is known for the mine shaft air. That and Cecil, everything up here is good for that. But I believe it did a 12.0, 12.1, 12.0. Then we didn't change the tune. We just swapped the drag pack on. So the ET Street R's that used to be on the blue car.
Right.
And it went, I think it picked up 0.2. So it did a 11.9 or 11.8, somewhere around in there. And it picked up 1 mile an hour. Then we flashed the 93 tune on. And that's something that I'll go over real quick. Is we did the baseline with the drag pack, and it did the 11.9. We swapped over the tune, and it went an 11.6, I believe, at 122. Mm-hmm. So it picked up a good chunk of mile an hour, and it picked up ET. Well, we were doing all our testing in normal mode. We weren't doing anything with drag mode. I don't really know why we did it that way. I think it's just because we were so used to driving it in normal mode, and that's where I was making all my changes. I just knew drag mode shifted really, really firm.
Especially the 1.2, it hurts. It hurts.
Yeah, well, on a street tire, you don't really, it's not going to benefit you at all at the track on a Pirelli to use drag mode. I'm pretty sure it'll just spin right through the 1.2. And because it's spinning so hard, it'll upshift a third. So it'll actually do like a 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay.
Because the gears are so close together. So we did. So basically, the pickup there, the ET pickup, was on the stock tune. Normal mode does torque reduction. On our tune, we lift all that. So it's not necessarily firmer shifts. It is a little firmer shifts with what we change, but the torque reduction lifted is what picked up the ET, because now you don't have spark being cut in between the shifts.
Okay.
And when you relieve that, you pick up, it basically is carrying the power better through each gear change.
So for people that don't know what torque reduction is, real quick, explain to them what torque reduction is in between gears.
So, like I said, that one method is the spark reduction. So and that's one of the quickest ways, and it's been doing that on, I believe, the 6R80s do it very lightly.
Yep.
On 11 to 17. So, excuse me a second.
No, go ahead. Take a sip of the milk.
So, I believe the 18 will do fuel cut, but it's only in extreme circumstances. So, in that case, on the base file, the OEM calibration, it's not going to do that. it just cuts spark, and especially in sport mode. So sport mode, they up the shift pressures a little bit, and they really cut spark. And sport mode's meant more for road racing, I feel, because it's really aggressive with the spark cut. And when you're going in and out of turns and it's rev match downshifting and all that, you don't want it to be herky-jerky on the drivetrain, or you don't want it to, break traction on the back tire when you're going in and out of turn, or you upshift to a turn. I actually, the first few customers that we got, I had sport mode torque reduction lifted, and one guy said it made it uncomfortable to drive because he wanted sport mode to be more for the street tire, because if you have a firmer shift and you don't have that torque reduction to help soften the shift when it does the gear change.
Yeah, send out in the turn, right?
Well, in this guy's case, the 10R80 shifts so much quicker than the 6R80 just by design. It will spin the tire and you won't even know it. It just, all of a sudden you realize you kind of fall forward a little bit in the seat, and then it makes the next gear change. Well, his was spinning the tire so hard, the RPM would lift and it would tap the limiter slightly. So then it'd shut down real hard, and, so I had to, that was a learning experience a little bit, because that's not something I had played with. I wasn't going out in first gear and mashing the throttle with the stock tires on it, because it was going to spin. So I did some stuff with the traction control on, but that was it. So basically, when we took it to the track, the main difference that netted the ET was the torque reduction. Now, if we had done drag mode with the stock calibration on the drag pack, I believe that it probably would have gone in 11.7.
Stock.
Probably stock at like 120-ish. Because on the stock calibration, ours was seeing, I believe, 23, 24 degrees of timing. And I'll touch lightly on this. Back in the YouTube video that I did, I go over what we saw baseline with the timing, and it seems on really good fuel, bone stock, it'll see 23, 24 degrees max. Basically, in our calibration, we are raising that spark ceiling up so that the NOx sensor can advance more timing in. Okay. And on our fuel up here, it's pretty good. The 93 octane, even the Wawa 92 up here is really good. Mm-hmm. And that's what we had in the orange stick car that we were testing with on the dyno. I would see 26, 27 degrees on pump 92, which is from the ones that I've data logged, and I've logged, over 200 of them so far. It's very rare to find one that gets that ignition timing on pump gas. Most of them are seeing 22, 23 degrees, and they're seeing that stock. So I'm finding a lot of guys get a little disappointed with the 18s when they hop in it. They're like, okay, the automatic feels better, so it's shifting quicker, firmer. The torque reduction's lifted, so you're feeling the shifts more. It's shifting a little quicker, but they don't feel like it's faster. So then they go to the track and they see that it picks up a little ET and not much mile an hour. And that's the reason, is the fuel quality is that they have is not able to handle it. So a few of them are pretty good sports. They'll put octanium in, or Torco, or some kind of fuel additive. Or they'll just switch to E85, and then they go back to the track and they see the big gain. And that was what we saw in December, is when we went the low 11s. We went 11.3 at 124, I think 3 or 4 times back to back. We hot lapped it too, just to make sure. And that mile an hour pickup, shows and reflects what we saw in the dyno, which was a good 30 horsepower gain.
From E84?
From 93 to E85.
Wow. On 2018s, now, is that typical on like 11 to 17 or not so much?
I don't think it's typical on 11 to 17. I would say that the 18 is parallel to the GT350. So, because it's very similar to what we saw on the GT350. So, back to the fuel quality. Our fuel quality was really good when we had our 350. we'd see similar ignition timing. And then on E85, it would pump up to, 29, 30 degrees. And we saw a good 30 plus horsepower gain. I have a little infographic somewhere that shows that comparison. And as we all know, it's just by the nature of the fuel and the cooling properties and how ethanol works, it just makes more power.
Is the power curve similar on a GT350 manual than on a manual 18 GT? Or is the GT350 just kind of pulls a little later than the 5.0 does? Like in terms of where it starts to actually make torque and actually creep up on horsepower?
Right. I believe the GT350 has a later torque curve, and it makes more power at high RPM.
Okay.
So, which is, typical for a road race type setup.
Mm-hmm.
And even stock, you can feel it. It's real lazy down low.
Yeah. I drove the one you guys had, and
right.
It was cool at like 6,000 RPMs. I was like, oh, okay, it starts to haul ass there, but the low,
right.
It's a dog. I was like, oh, these cars don't really have anything down low.
Right. And I think we both said it needs a gear if we're going to drag race.
Because it's some dumb shit like that.
Yeah.
It needs a lot of gear.
Because the 373s are horrible.
Yeah, on that car especially. So real quick, what's the quickest your the Lund Racing Black 2018 ever went, and tell us the mods that got it to that ET.
So the quickest with the Whipple.
Naturally aspirated.
Naturally aspirated.
Because 90% of people are going to do that for a long time until they can, get the Whipple, right. Get the Roush, get the Paxton and Pro Chargers and stuff on these cars.
So December, I still had the bone stock exhaust on it. Still had the stock airbox. That day we did pull out the air filter just to see what it would do, because on the dyno we saw a 5 to 6 horsepower gain.
Okay.
And that's just taking the panel filter out of the airbox and running it.
But the stock
no filter
box itself, but just no filter inside of it.
Yeah, and it actually runs really good. Like, it idles perfect.
It
drives great.
It doesn't turbo, wigging it out.
Right.
Anything.
Right.
Cool.
Right. That's good engineering.
Millions of dollars of engineering. Who would have thought?
Yeah, we still had the carbon trap in the top of the airbox too, okay, when we ran it. So we kept it that way. Granted, for the street, we did put the filter back in, so because it was going to be driven in the rain and all that. But there was a break due to the winter. Then I believe after winter, we didn't get a chance to take it to the track again. So we just bolted on Cook's long tubes. So it has Cook's 1 7/8", 3-inch exhaust all the way to Corsa Sports out the back, and it's super obnoxious. You've heard it.
It's cool,
and
damn, it's loud. I mean, shit.
Yeah. It's getting the stock mufflers put back on.
Yeah,
so
good idea.
But we took that to the.
Go ahead.
We never ran it that way with the 315 gear. So we decided to try 410 gears out because some other companies were trying it out, and we figured, people are going to see that and they're going to want to do it. So we need to make sure that we have a calibration that's going to at least shift, Right. We put them in, and it really woke the car up, as far as it basically took the stack of gears and just, tightened them all up. So we took it to the track, I believe, in March, and the air was actually worse than it was in December. So I think it was 500 positive DA, which that's 1,000 DA swing from what we had. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty big for a naturally aspirated car. And once we got the shifts ironed out, it went a 1094 at 126, and that's still with pump E85 in it. Then we proceeded to do poor man's weight reduction. So we took all the stuff that we could get out that you could do at the track and then re-bolted on at the track. So it's not like we were,
you take the air bags out or anything like that.
Yeah, we didn't do anything extreme where it's going to be a pain to put it back in. We actually put it all back in before we left, and it took like 45 minutes. So we did the seats, the air pump in the back, and we dropped the exhaust. So it was open header, and then it went 1088 at almost 127. So it actually didn't really pick up that much, which is to be expected because it only shed like 100 pounds.
Okay.
So and we were going to put FTW in it, and FTW purple. Everyone that's watching, well, most everyone knows what that is. Yeah. It's basically nitro meth E85. So
you ever sat behind the car that idles with that shit? You're like, oh shit.
Yeah, it's awful. It smells awesome, though.
Yeah, it does.
So we ended up not being able to run that. We did do like a slight mixture with it, but it wasn't enough to really make a big difference. It was almost synonymous to having C85 in the tank, which picks up 5 horsepower on naturally aspirated stuff. So if we had run it 100% FTW, I believe we could have gotten a 10.7 out of it, because that stuff picks up 20 horsepower on naturally aspirated cars.
Is it just on the stoic change, or do you think there's timing to be basically added, or it's just the nature of the fuel kind of just provides the additional power?
So the way that I've played with FTW is, in nature with nitro, is it likes fuel, or it likes to be richer.
Right.
So you keep the ignition timing the same. In some cases, I pull a little bit out because I kind of treat it a little bit like, you're spraying a small shot of nitrous.
Right.
So I did leave the ignition timing the same. There was one car that we did, a Cobra Jet car in Texas that Manuel Gomez had at Midnight Performance. Mm-hmm. And I did leave the ignition timing the same. And I've actually richened up the air fuel slightly.
Okay.
And I've seen that on other cars, and it picks up, a little bit of power. It's more noticeable on a blown application. So I believe 1/10 or 0.1 rich will pick up probably 20 horse on a blown, like on a supercharged car.
And
on an NA car.
There's tuners watching, even though they probably don't want to admit it. There's tuners watching this right now, and they're probably going, "Wait a minute, really?" So they're probably going, "This diagram that," and But I do.
There is a caveat though. That fuel is a little volatile. So, in talking with some other calibrators in the industry.
One more spark. Yeah, just run a ton of spark. Fuck it. Yeah.
Just return everything to stock.
Oh shit, didn't work at all.
Exactly.
But basically, you got to be careful with FTW tuning it. It likes to be run a little richer, and you think it's worth about 1/10 naturally aspirated, depending on.
Yeah, around there, 10th and a half, maybe. It's.
85.
I haven't really had a chance to back-to-back test it the same day, but blown cars. I did do our blue car, and it picked up 0.2 and 2.5 mile an hour.
Got it.
All in the same day. So I have that test.
Okay.
I don't think it's that drastic on a naturally aspirated car.
So let's talk real quick about the Whipple install and how the car ran. Then I want to talk about Manuel Gomez's car before this thing tells us that we're out of time. So the Whipple goes on the black bean is what you guys call it, the black bean, the black 2018. Right. Everything was the same from the 1080 run. You reinstalled the exhaust, and then you just threw a 3-liter Gen 5 Whipple on it?
Mm-hmm. So we were trying to make Maple Grove NMRA with it. We had a little bit of issues with parts because it was a pre-production kit.
Right.
So after NMRA, we got it on, thanks to our buddy down at the local shop, Jason Baker.
Yep.
He got it all buttoned up, really good install, kit's clean, put on the dyno. I wasn't going to go to the track with it. I wanted to get basically most of the drivability squared away as far as, idle, no stalling, smooth throttle. And I did all that on the street, actually, before we put on the dyno, just because it's easier to feel it a little bit. And I just wanted to see what I could get out of it on 93 octane, our 93 octane, which, as we've discussed, is pretty good up here. And I am aware of that when we're calibrating. Mm-hmm. So I try to maximize it, and then I put a cushion in there. So on 93, after some cam timing tweaks and some other magic with direct injection sauce, we got 735 horse out of it. We posted that on our Instagram. I don't remember the torque. I think it was upper 500s. It was
high fives.
Yeah, it was more. All I know is I was trying to beat Lethal's car with how much torque it had. So
That's honest. You're being honest. You're competing against yourself. Well, no, they
right.
tuned. Who's tuning? Is a Lethal's car tuned by Lund yet, or are they just have a?
No, it was Whipple's tune.
Whipple's tune.
Yeah,
got it. Okay.
Yeah. So competing with Dustin.
Exactly. So
or they're calibrated.
Exactly. So basically, you achieved that, and then what fuel modifications were done in order to bump it up to an E85 mix or just straight E85?
So, first on pump gas, we had ID 1050s laying around, so we tossed them in, and that's going to be a typical port injection upgrade on those because they do have port injection and they have direct injection, and there's blending logic in the calibration for both of those. We knew that guys were going to be doing that. We had them laying around. They tuned great. We put them in. We also put a JMS booster pump on it. And the reason we went with that is because it's very adjustable. So we have a wide range of flexibility with what we can do with it as far as, cranking the voltage up, changing it from 18 to 22 volts. It's a nice unit as long as everything is, connected properly and functioning properly. So we had that on there. It does need a little bit of assistance on the lift pump, and the lift pump is the in-tank pump with direct injection. The nomenclature is lift pump, and then the high-pressure pump is the DI pump. Okay. So there's no longer anything called a fuel pump because there's two. So you have to assist the lift pump to keep everything happy. You have to go in and mess with the blending a little bit. But on E85, I wanted to see how far I could push the stock lift pump. And right as suspected, because I had already tested on a ProCharge car, on 9 pounds of boost on that car, it was already pushing the limit of that pump. And we had the voltage jacked up to 22 volts.
Oh, wow. And
we were seeing fuel pressure drop to 30 PSI on the low pressure side. And when that happens, it's going to negatively affect the head pressure on the DI pump. So you got to be careful with that. And then you're starting to really, really depend on the blend. And, then you got to go, okay, well, I got to lean out the air fuel mixture to balance everything. And on pump gas, it gets a little hokey because at the end of the day, you're dealing with pump gas. And now you're not at 100% DI, so your detonation deterrence is a little different. And then it starts to be more like port injection. So you can't run too lean on 93 octane or 91 in some cases. So, or in that case, it's E85, but even then you still don't want to run too lean. So, and you can't run too much ignition timing. So we figured, okay, well, the Whipple kit comes with that new Detroit's 400 pump, and everyone's raving about it, and we do need to test it. And we knew that it was going to have a higher output than the stock pump just based on some data we've seen. Because it's basically like a stock pump with a 17-volt BAP on it right out the gate as far as its output.
Got it.
So we dropped it in. We didn't actually get to test it on the dyno. So on E85, I'll back up. On Torco, we made 760 just by adding ignition timing. So that's Torco plus 93. Then on E85, we made right at 800. And that's actually the same ignition timing, just E85.
Right.
So it picked up 40 horsepower. And for those guys out there that says E85 sucks, that's
40
it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would argue that if we had C16 in it with for non-ethanol, it would have made 760 still.
Yep.
And E85 still would have made 800.
By the way, I'm digging the balloon Spider-Man behind you. That's pretty sweet.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the boys. So I figured I'd invite him.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, I saw a test that you guys did on C16 on a customer's car that he really wanted to see how much spark you could throw at it. When you changed them over to E85 and it made like 30 more horse, right? Like, I believe it's not Tisdale, is it? Is that his name?
Yeah, it's George. Yep.
Right. So
the white.
On C16, it only made, a lot of spark. What, like 7 something or high 7?
Yep.
And then an E85 was like 30 more horse.
I think it was actually more. I think
Wow.
Jake at Power by the Hour and I saw 60 on his car.
Holy
Yeah.
shit. From just
Yeah. It's always been faster on E85.
Yeah, but the problem is I guess he runs in a class that does not allow ethanol. He has to run C16.
Yeah, it's NHRA, some NHRA class.
So
But after we did the 800 horse, we had already taken off the dyno. It was in that week that we were planning to take it to the track because it was finally nice weather up here. It was raining a lot, as you guys are aware, down there. So we swapped the pump, and we didn't want to throw it back on, so I just went out and did some street hits, and it definitely helped. So we were seeing 30 PSI with E85 and 11, 12 pounds of boost. It was starting to go lean, actually, at high RPM. Like, it was legit running out of fuel. Put that pump on, I went out and did a hit, and it's holding like 60 PSI now. So it picked up a bunch, and we just left it like that. So we left it on the 22 volts on the D-Torx 400 pump, and nothing else has changed. It's just, those basic bolt-on mods. Went to the track, and we threw 93 back in it because we wanted to, again, go back with our theme with testing what the everyday man is going to do. And we really wanted to see if we could try to, chip away at a 9-second pass on 93 octane because it's just really cool.
Right.
And we got a 1026 at 139. And then the air was just, it was ridiculous that day. I think it was 3,700 DA is what one of those guys, those little, I don't know what they're called, those little red things with the little baro sensor on it. He had one there.
Holds it up in the air or something like that? Or?
Yeah, so it's legit. Like the actual DA was 3,700. It was really bad outside. And so we just progressed from there. We did 93, and then MS-109, it went 10.0, and then we did E85, which is actually the same ignition timing it had on MS-109. So that same, test again, and it went a 9.8 and picked up, some 2.5 mile an hour or something like that. And then we swapped the pulley, picked up a pound and a half of boost, and then it went to 9.6 at 146.
And
so I think
you reinstalled the 315 years in that, right?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah,
410 to the 315.
We did that because the 410s, it does make it a little more difficult to shift or catch the shifts because it's accelerating quicker through the gears. I don't think I would have had a problem with making it work. The problem was it was going to have to go out the back in 7th gear. And what I found, and it may not have happened on this car because the torque level isn't high enough to really start pushing those. It's not going to make those clutches slip. But seems like around the 800 foot-pound mark to the tire, it will start pushing the clutches in the entire transmission, but the clutch combination in 7th gear just starts slipping. It doesn't like it. So but that's why on Jesus's car, which is that crimson one at the Auto Welds twin turbo car,
right, we
did the 1,000 horse pole in 6th, which is crazy to think about because if we had it in 7th, it would have made more power if the clutches held.
Right. Doesn't it show more torque if you were able to get a torque reading in a higher gear, for lack of a better word, because you're spinning faster?
Right. And that 1-to-1 gear, it just would be more accurate. From what I've seen is 6th to 7th picks up, it's similar to doing like a 4th to 5th gear pull on an MT82. I don't remember the percentage. It's sometimes we see 20 horse difference.
But the torque is the number that makes you go, oh, wow, look, it actually really moved up a little bit. So that's a good segue into Jesus's car, the Midnight Performance twin turbo Aldo car. That car has gone 8 on a bone stock engine, bone stock transmission. What was the most challenging thing besides Manuel doing hits at 3 a.m. and getting your logs at 3 a.m? What was the most challenging thing to really mess around with that car? Because the car is brand new at the time, and it rolls out, runs an 890, 150, 3, 4, 5, something like that?
I think it did 153. I think it went 155.
Because I know Terry's car went 155 and Manuel's customer's car. So, take me. Oh, that's a nice panel.
How do I switch back?
I think there's a double arrow thing on the right. There you go.
Oh man,
it's okay.
I don't even know how I did that. I'm trying to scroll through the comments a little bit just to see if we're missing anything good. But
some people were asking, some guy wants to put a coyote into a Firebird, and I just stopped right there. No offense, I love you, man, but we're not putting.
I don't do Firebirds.
Yeah, nothing. So, what was the most challenging thing and the coolest thing that you found out when you worked on that car? Briefly, because I want to try to get to some of these questions.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember because it feels like so long ago when we were doing all that stuff, even though it was like a month and a half. Basically, I had tuned Terry's car first. We did the dyno pulls. So I had, you tune these NA and it's like, oh yeah, everything's going great. I'm not going to really have to make that many changes when we go boost because it's just, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm not going to get in the nitty gritty
Exactly.
and spill beans to everybody, but
Exactly.
it's like, oh yeah, I got it in the bag. There's some little things on the dyno that we learned, and we made 1,000 horse with Terry's. I'm like, okay, it's a turbo car
Right.
that I'm dealing with, man. Well, it's basically the same tune, just different cam timing, more or less. And it wasn't that way. So he just wanted to turn the wick up right out of the gate. Well, it didn't shift well, and that's when it really got, it starts. I would say there's no other better term. It's just twisting my arm, basically. And it's putting a challenge in front of my face that I don't want to back down from because I know how crucial it is. And just from a personal standpoint, it's just I want to be able to get better and better myself and not give up. I'm not one to give up.
Right.
Even though during that whole process, I threw my hands up in the air a bunch. And I know all the other tuners out there that are, going through it are going to do the same exact thing, or they'll copy our tune.
Why would you fancy devices to just, drop it? Hey, there you go.
Right. Just beware, there are Easter eggs.
Oh.
So if you copy it,
we'll know.
You will know.
We'll know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm putting that out there publicly.
Oh, yeah. We will know if you're jacking our shit. Trust me.
Yeah.
So when it went in 890, I know that you were creeping up on that number. It was like 930, 920. Then all of a sudden, one night, all the stars aligned. Was it mostly the shifting that you kind of dialed in that got everything going, or was it him installing that two-step and getting out of the hole better?
So it went a 950. Once I got most of the stuff figured out with the shifting, which that in and of itself was, without giving out too much detail, we're fighting the transmission slipping. So think about a 6R80 and when it slips. When it slips and you're trying to tune it, you end up second guessing yourself a lot because you're like, what am I missing here? It's missing the shift or it's doing this. Well, if it's blowing through a clutch, there's nothing the PCM is going to be able to do about it. It's just either going to hit the limiter or, not. It's not going to shift. So fighting a transmission back is what made it more difficult, hindsight 2020. After all that, what helped to get out of the hole better was the two-step. So he was using a foot brake to spool it up, and then he'd release it and launch. So he was just working on chipping away at the 60-foot. What helped on I think we went a string of 920s and 9-teens all over 154. What helped on that last one was I believe I just I tweaked the shift points a little bit. It almost, when you look at the log, it looks like a power glide. So
yep.
It's just the RPM is just hanging up. It's just hanging up there while it's shifting, and that's what did it. We ring out 6th gear. We figured that out quickly that it doesn't like 7th. So ring out 6th gear to whatever RPM. Put a 28-inch tire on it, or if you start running out of RPM, just put a bigger tire.
Technically. Cool. No, it's badass that a bone stock engine. I mean, unopened, never been opened up. It's just a badass kit that Aldo welds down in Houston. I've heard a lot about his ice tanks. I've heard a lot about his intercooler setups and everything. He's a badass fabricator and welder. And when I heard he was going to get into turbo kits, I'm like, that's probably going to be pretty badass. Because even the Hellcat guys swear by him for ice tank and all that stuff. They're like,
it's really clean, super clean. And even the way that the intercooler system functions, so the intercooler that he made just works great. We've never, at the track, when it's iced, you don't really have to run much ice, and it's hot in Texas. So, I think when it went to 899, it was at night, but it was still hot out. It was like 80-something degrees.
Yeah, it's still muggy. There's a lot of moisture in there. It's pretty nasty down there.
Well, the IETs with that boost level, so it's 12-ish pounds of boost, they were under 70 degrees. So we have the IETs below ambient, and that is helping, that stock engine. That's the ticket. There's a lot of guys out there that say, IETs don't matter with E85. Well, they're wrong.
Get the fuck out of here.
They're really, really wrong. So I'm not going to dive into the science behind it. They're just wrong. So that is the ticket. So the next step for that car is the boost we dynoed on. So 15 pounds of boost. And I'll just have to go short shift it at 3,000 RPM for every shift and return everything back to stock.
Yeah, return everything back to stock. And we'll design Lambda at Watt 1.2. And you should be good to go. It'll go right down the track.
Exactly.
So let's do this real quick. I'm going to go through here. I'm going to get some questions going, and then I'll have you answer them. First question from Rambo Nate. Do you guys tune older vehicles, or is it only the state-of-the-art equipment? He always wondered.
Depends on how old it is.
What is the oldest that you want to tune?
That is a question I don't think a lot of people want me to answer.
Coyote obviously is something that's our bread and butter, and GT500. 3-valve and 2-valve, it's a little tougher because the vehicle's older, right? There's a lot of sensors.
Right. They've
been through everyone's mom, and you're like, okay, what am I gonna do? But I think GT500 and 11 and up Coyote is our bread and butter. Anything older is subject to our, nitpicking, like, okay, yes, no, maybe. And if you have a ZT2 kit, which you can analog air fuel into older cars, we're probably more likely to tune it than not.
Yeah, basically, we'll do 03, 04 Cobras, but they're old cars now. I would consider some of them antiques because they're low mileage. Well, some of them are low mileage. The ones that we watch out for are high mileage ones. Beat on. They probably had 50 bottles of nitrous ran through them, and you don't know about it.
Right.
The paint's mint, but you don't know what happened to the engine. So a lot of the older cars, we're getting in the habit where it's like, okay, we want a compression check done. Sometimes that scares people, and we don't intend for it to scare people. It's a little bit of us covering our butts, but we also don't want to tune something that's injured, and have it not perform properly, let alone be blamed for blowing the engine up when we didn't blow it up in the first place.
Exactly.
So, and that aside, the older cars always tend to come with more issues, and we already deal with enough issues with guys who can't put the MAF sensors in correctly.
Oh my God, you're telling me. Oh.
Yeah, or connect or follow the 18 manifold instructions that Mr. Ryan Bond made for us.
Yep.
And it's super in depth, and there's people that still can't follow them, and they get codes, and it's just like, okay, we're troubleshooting all this on mass volume, trying not to let our head spin off. The last thing I want to do is go tune a 2-valve and try to figure out or try to tell them how to adjust the throttle screw on it, because then it's just like you got to switch gears. It's like, okay, well, those you can do a lot of stuff to, I would say, hack around, because that's really how you have to tune some of the older stuff. It's a lot of, to make it work.
Exactly.
And I'm in the habit now where I don't want to do hack arounds. You can't actually, there is this tipping point with the calibrating where hacking around will actually shoot yourself in the foot. And I think we're like, the pendulum has swung. So you can't hack around on a 2018. You will shoot yourself in the foot.
Exactly.
So 11 to 17, some of it's it'll give a little bit, but when you get down to the brass tacks, it's just the calibration won't allow you to do it. So
exactly. OEM spec says, how far can you go with a stock 5.0 2017 horsepower wise to the rear wheel? Basically, let's assume he's got all the right shit, right? E85 boost and everything's right. What are you comfortable at tuning a guy for rear wheel horsepower and not really guarantee it's going to blow up, but it's less likely to let go?
What year was it?
2017.
So a Gen 2 Coyote, what's the max horsepower potential?
Yeah.
Well, potential, we've had some make over 900.
Yeah, and the VMP car made 1,000 once.
Right.
But we know that's not where we want to be comfortably.
Right. I would say a best example, and I don't think he minds because he posted pictures, is Alex Rance, who we've tuned, has a Hellion kit on his. He's been at 892, I believe, at 153 in the quarter with a 6R80. And that car, based on the mile an hour and the weight, it's making over 900 horsepower. He did that pass. He runs it on the street a lot. And it's just E85 after, 2.5 years of abuse, because he had a Paxton setup on it that went 9.2s at high 140s. He went to pull some plugs recently and it had lifted ahead.
Oh.
But nothing else was damaged. So I just had a little coolant and that was it. So as long as the customer is aware of the risk, we'll push one. But they have to accept that liability. I'm not going to go push one. I'm not going to have somebody say, hey, I want it to make 900, and if it breaks or blows up or lifts ahead or this, you're responsible. Well,
okay.
No, dude. I would say our comfortable level with liability involved is, high 700s, 800, around in there.
That's where I'm comfortable also. That's where I say, hey, it's fine unless there's some other shit going on, like if I don't know, plug the exhaust or bad gas or lose a fuel.
Yeah, there's always those things where you can't help. Yeah,
exactly. Diddy GT50 or 50. How often do you guys tune Coyotes with the larger ProCharger head unit? I'm looking to upgrade the D1SC to the F1A94.
Dwayne Hickman comes to mind because he had an F1C and he had an air-to-air on it. It was their race air-to-air, and he fought IAT issues on that thing for like 6 months. And I told him finally, put air-to-water in it. So I believe he got one of our fluid air-to-water units and then a TIG Vision tank or, some, trunk mount tank, put it in there,
right,
and it fixed all his problems. The F1A and the F1C, just the IATs are horribly high. Even on, I think he was on 20 pounds of boost. So it doesn't seem like a lot of boost. They were just, the air-to-air that he was using wasn't efficient enough to keep up. And I'll say that the IATs were 200 degrees at the end of the quarter mile. So,
I remember he was at Orlando testing before Bradenton that year when he was out with that car.
Mm-hmm.
Now that car got out. It was a 6R80 car with 355s, right?
Yeah, it went, finally, when we got all that squared away, it went high eights. So, right. And it was heavy. It was a heavy car.
Yeah, it was pretty fully loaded. Now I guess he's doing the whole, workup on it. Man of War asks, so oil pump gears on a 2018, are they updated from the factory? Is this possibly true? Have you heard anything about the oil pump? I don't think many engines have been apart even to verify that.
No, and I'd have to talk to Jake at Power by the Hour again. I remember him telling me that the oil pump gears are a little different because I remember him saying the install was different. I don't know the specifics and I don't want to butcher it at all, but that doesn't lend anything to the strength of anything. So our stock engine in our blue car that we had run low nines at 152, it had stock crank sprocket and stock oil pump gears. I personally, and I don't know about you, I've not seen a Gen 2 Coyote break the oil pump gears.
One. It had it was supercharged, It was not tuned by Lund Racing, and I believe the gentleman loved to slap it off the limiter.
Okay.
Because I believe he was from the Middle East. So I think it was okay for him to just lay it on the limiter all day, pop, 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 like nonstop, and all that slapping. I think finally the crank sprocket, not the oil pump gears, the crank sprocket split, and it jumped the chain, and it threw cam codes, so he brought it in.
Okay.
But the oil pump gears were okay. So.
Yeah. And I would say that, you know, he hit the limiter probably a lot harder than I hit the limiter in our car, but you know, I would zing our car at 8,100 a lot. And there's been a bunch of customers that have done the same thing. Even some NA guys, Robert Ball's one, although I think he's upgraded his. I don't know if he upgraded the sprocket, but we're shifting that thing at, you know, 8,200 RPM. So the thing that comes after that is, you know, piston rings and all that. So can they handle that, you know?
Exactly. I think it's LMNOP 1776, or I don't know if that's some kind of weird shit. It says, how's the transmission in the Lund's Manual 18 R&D car holding up? Because you've heard about the fork failures and all that shit. How's it holding up as far as you know?
Well, it's holding up, but that's only because the car has like 400 miles on it. We haven't even. That car is the cleanest car.
It's so clean. I'm like, it has 400 miles, and he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my god, he never drives it, but yeah, transmission's holding up fine. Another thing we were asking, I saw on the internet, Manuel alluded to it on one of the forums about the 10R80s having issues. Since you tuned most, if not all, of the 10R80 Mustangs, how many have you seen been an issue in your travels?
So I can remember 2 naturally aspirated guys having issues, and one's ongoing right now. He got back to me. I think he posted up on Anything Coyote recently. His name's Zach. His had some kind of, we're waiting on details back, but they're replacing the converter, and I believe the front hub. Something failed because it had metal go through the transmission, and it was throwing some solenoid error. I had another guy that was bone stock. He had issues before he even flashed anything. And I'm not saying that the tune's causing anything at all. Like, you know, there's guys with OEM cars having failures. There was one, and I'm not ashamed to hide it. There's one that had a Pro Charger on it, and it was on the dyno, so we weren't even shifting it. Hadn't even seen, you know, power. Single gear, 7th gear, so it's like a 600 horse setup. Right around 160 mile an hour, it kept having a power dip, and we didn't know why. Well, on the 3rd or 4th pole, the transmission exploded. Legit exploded.
Exploded?
So, yeah, it blew a hole in the case. Some part came out. I don't know yet. I believe the trans is going to be down at Power by the Hour so that Jake can diagnose it. It probably already is there.
Is that the orange car?
The orange car. I believe it's
on bag. Yeah. I think it has bag. Yeah, it's there.
Yeah. It's one of our dealers. So he was real cool about it. He understood, you know, it wasn't during a shift. It wasn't anything that I could see that would be caused by the calibration, especially since there's an 8-second car with the same transmission calibration, you know, and then our car, you know. It looked like something was binding up, and it exploded so hard, though, it cracked the block. So
it took the engine with it, basically.
Yeah, I've never seen it before. I've never seen anything crack a case and crack the block like that. So the harmonics that were going on to, you know, nick the power up top must have been whatever was going on in that transmission was bad. So
not a good look. What are your thoughts on meth? I see a lot of people kind of asking about meth and water meth kits, and is water meth, as you know, is ethanol a good replacement for cooling than water meth with E85? What are your thoughts on average with water meth kits or straight meth kits on boosted Mustangs?
It works. Water meth works. You and I have talked about this quite extensively. The best example I have is our EcoBoost when it was a stock motor, and I wanted that extra edge So we put a 50/50 shot on it with, I forget what size the pill was for the meth. Basically, it was to help supplement the fuel system on that because it was out of fuel with the boost we were running. But it was also to help with cooling. And I would see a 30-degree IAT drop going down the track running a 50/50. And I believe, well, I'll circle back. I'm using real-world examples so people have something to relate to. Yeah. Alex Rance with the stock motor S550 with the Hellion intercooler, it just wouldn't keep up anymore. So we were seeing 170 IATs. Again, some people would say that's not high. And we ran the water meth, and out the back it would see 120. Oh, so wow. Yeah, it works when necessary. I think some people want to just use it to use it. They think it's going to pick up power, a lot of power. But I think they forget that, there's certain tuners that tune it where they just run gobs of ignition timing with it and throw caution to the wind. No. So we're very nitpicky with that because, if that pump fails, if you forget to fill it up, and you have a tune that's set up to be aggressive with the methanol, there's no fail-safe involved. There's nothing that's going to tell the calibration to yank all the timing back out because the meth isn't tied to the PCM. Right. So sure, there's knock sensors, but you don't, it can be too late. So
exactly. And I have people here kind of saying that they dropped, certain temperatures with meth and this and that. Project Honey Badger, which I believe, I totally forget his name, Josh Baker. He asked if,
sorry, Josh.
Yeah, he asked if it had anything to do with paddle shifting. If he thinks the 10R80 premature failures has anything to do with paddle shifting. Have you seen anything that would suggest that?
No, I don't think so. And then someone else said, his name's Stang Mode Official, 10,000 miles on a 10R80. I think he says he's tuned by some competitor.
I saw
but it went into limp mode on paddles, driver error. I've not actually seen one go into limp mode on paddles. Well, it'll go into limp mode on paddles if you don't have the proper crap changed in the tune. So I have a video somewhere floating around where Dasan and I are out driving, and purposely I told him, smash the limiter. Like, I set the limiter at 8100. Let's go out. It's an R&D vehicle. If we blow it up, we blow it up. So he took it out, and we were on the street, and every shift he took it to the limiter. So 8100, and then he tapped the paddle, and we never had one issue. So, and then he made a couple paddle shifts that were normal, and that was naturally aspirated, and it was fine. I believe our black car, I've had the 7500, no issues with paddles, and it's making 600 foot-pounds of torque. So,
yeah, not a big deal. One of the guys here, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, the paddles are irrelevant because it's using the same shift pressures, so to speak. So
PD Aguilar is funny. He says, I put an 18 manifold on my 60 GT with a Lund tune, and the car wouldn't shift on its own and had the paddle shift it or let off throttle. He simply installed something wrong, because if it was with IMRCs locked out and we sent the right tune, it's not an issue unless he had the pigtails and wired something up funky. That's not typical PD. PD, that is very much not typical. I've been here, 2 months? And I've probably done 30 or 40, give or take, combinations, and now they're swaying towards the lockout because some people are a little afraid of going in and actually doing it properly because it requires some rewiring and stuff like that. So if you're afraid of an 18 manifold install, lock it out and route the vacuum lines properly, and you won't have issues. So PD, I'm sorry you're having those issues if you are tuned by us, but that is not typical. If you haven't sent in a data log, make sure to do that for us. If you don't mind.
That's definitely
not typical. Yeah, it kind of sucks to hear that the 2018 Mustang has a bum MT82 also. Ben Calmer and said that the forks are actually weaker than previous generations, but the gears are stronger. Figure that. They fixed the problem from 11 to 17, but on the fork side, they kind of made it weaker. But I gotta admit, when you tune 2018, do you see more 10R80s or more manuals being tuned by you?
It's probably 80% 10R80.
Wow, that many. Because in 15 to 17 Mustang, it's like the other way manual. Like I can't believe how many manual, naturally aspirated, obviously. Guys with boost or have a Whipple, a Pro Charger Paxton or whatever, they tend to have an auto because I think they thought about it like, hey, eventually I'm going to go racing, so I'm going to get an auto in it, and those cars tune super easy. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to keep this an hour long because I don't want to bore people. We still have 90 viewers. We still have 90 viewers, but I want to keep it an hour long. And look at that. Right on time, it says 26 seconds remaining. That's perfect. So, John, thank you. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know you have 3 kids, one of them that happens to be a bit of a pain in the butt, especially when it comes to waking up to surprises. But I want to thank you guys, and I thank you, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow. I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah. No, not a problem at all. This was fun. Well,
so there you have it. It cut us short a little bit, but you guys get the message. You can fast forward through the video, watch the whole video. John's a natural on camera. I'm really happy that he was comfortable and allowed us to do it. So we'll be doing this more regularly, uploading any live feed that you guys might have missed to my YouTube channel. See if you guys get some information that otherwise you wouldn't get if you don't follow me on Instagram. So thanks again for watching. I'll be doing this every Thursday or so, depending on how the schedule shakes out. But look for more live feed uploads coming up. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk to you later.